very near Germany. So the people who set out and conquered all the world and to which we owe our modern language came from what before World War I was part of Germany. For over 2,000 years, waves of Aryan barbarians, Kassites, Hittites, Cimmerians, Scythians, Medes, Persians, Dorians, Thracians, Celts, Germans, and Sarmatians washed over the more cultured lands to the east, south, and west of their northern homes. Sometimes they were driven back, sometimes they set up mighty empires. I think we'll pause there and go to another book to get a little bit more about the horsemen. So we have the first Horsemen, The Emergence of Man, Time Life books. Page 9. Wherever man has left his footprint in the long ascent from barbarism to civilization, we will find the hoofprint of the horse beside it. End quote. So says one authority on the history of the horse. Whether barbarism has been left behind may remain a question, but there can be no doubt about the role of the horse in the odyssey of man. Without the horse, man would be neither what nor where he is. The stage on which man first mastered the horse, sometime in the shadows of prehistory, is immense. The 3,500-mile sweep of steppes that spreads across 2 continents from Hungary to Manchuria. Here, some 3,000 years ago, emerged a new breed of men with enlarged aspirations, the mounted horsemen. Their advent would alter forever not only the direction and velocity of the human drama, but also the very minds and manners of all the other players. For once man mounted a horse, he loomed 8 feet tall and could outrun all his ancient enemies. What the horsemen of the steppes called themselves, even after they had assembled in aggressive bands and begun to terrorize the ancient world, is uncertain. Since they did not write, they left no record to enlighten modern archaeologists puzzling over their remains. The names by which the most famous of the tribes are best remembered were the conventions of outsiders. Greeks and Chinese, who at various times and places encountered and wrote about them, referring to them as Scythians, that's S-C-Y-T-H, Sarmatians, Yuechi, or Haseongnu, and yet, however different their names may be, all the horsemen of the steppes had much in common. The first of the mounted nomads to attract the attention of historians were the Scythians. They were the horsemen for whom the record is most complete, enriched not only by the colorful account of ancient observers, but by the discoveries of archaeologists. Skip a little ways. In a time when nations had not yet developed skilled cavalrymen and relied almost entirely on foot soldiers and chariots, the Scythians came riding at the gallop, shooting fusillades of singing arrows from their bows. The arrows were armed with deadly 3-edged heads. Each man carried arrows and bow deftly stashed in a single case, a goritus, G-O-R-Y-T-U-S, worn at the left side, and each carried in a sheath tied to the right side a long knife or a short sword with a straight blade of bronze or iron. Sometimes warriors also armed themselves with a javelin and shield of leather, scaled with metal plates. Their horses descended from the herds of wild stock that roamed the steppe. The Scythians clipped the normally shaggy manes. They rode on rudimentary saddles made of 2 pads that probably did little more than protect the thighs from abrasion. There were no stirrups. When stirrups finally appeared centuries later, they required a shift from flat to heeled boots. So the heel on a boot was originally designed to catch the stirrup from slipping all the way back past your heel up around your ankle. Gosh, that would be a disaster. Where had they come from, these men who seemed to have been born on horseback? Skipping a bit, some scholars speculate that the Scythians came from the Volga basin and reached the South Russian steppe sometime around 1000 BC, displacing the Cimmerians, whose homeland it had been. By the end of the 6th century BC, the Scythians' mastery of the horse had made them undisputed rulers of a flat, grassy domain that reached westward along the Azov and Black Seas, from the Don River to the mouth of the Danube, embracing almost all of what is now the Ukraine, and northward 400 miles to some nebulous boundary where the steppe vanished into an irregular sprawl of dense forest and marshes, Germany and Poland. Through their might, they dominated the farmers on the fringes of the steppe, and in its river valleys, and ultimately they dominated even the inhabitants of Olbia, Tyrus, Theodosia, and other Greek trading colonies on the northern rim of the Black Sea. The city dwellers called the enormous tracts of country ruled by the nomads Scythia, and the Greeks, by extension, named the horsemen Scythians. It was also a Greek who left the first full account of them. Around the middle of the 5th century BC, Herodotus, that indefatigable reporter of antiquity, was in the Black Sea city of Olbia, a trading center at the confluence of the Bug and Dnieper rivers, collecting information that would eventually enable him to compile his celebrated history of the Greek and Persian wars. There he had ample opportunity to gather material on the Scythians, whose traders were well known in the Greek merchant colonies. The copious observations of Herodotus, while partly a savory scavenger's stew of legend and folklore, also contain a large helping of facts about the Scythians, truths confirmed by later classical writers, and by startling modern archaeological discoveries, some of them made since World War II. Then it goes into detail about the Scythians, but there's just another version of the history of the domestication of the horse. Perhaps the people came from the area of modern Poland and Germany, or perhaps, as this book says, they came from an area south and east of modern Poland and Germany, and their rule extended up to but limited and did not enter the area of Poland and Germany. They didn't even rule that part, let alone come from that part, according to this guy. But according to this other guy, they were from Germany and Poland, the people who conquered everything and everywhere. So he might be just a bit biased on the side of, he says there's no Aryan race, but he might be influenced by the stories of Aryanism or something like that. Or maybe he's correct in this Time Life book, guys. Full of nonsense. But either way, we get it. Somewhere in Europe or Russia, the horse was domesticated somewhere around 1000 BC or so. 1500 BC. The Indo-European tribe, the Medes, settled in western Iran. So here we're back to ancient engineering, of course. On the Nisaean plain, they bred horses for size until the horses were as big as modern riding horses. These could bear a man even when wearing armor. For centuries, the Medes, the Persians, and other Iranians had the world's best cavalry, not only because they were skillful riders, but also because they had the largest horses. The kings of Assyria, however, soon copied the Medes. Again and again they sent marauding armies over the mountains into Media to capture some of the famous horses for their own breeding stock. In the ancient world, the chariot was built in many sizes and shapes, and was pulled by 1 to 4 horses, mules, or asses. The maximum load was limited by the fact that the animals were always harnessed abreast, never in tandem. Therefore, the number that could be hitched to a given vehicle was restricted by the width of roads and gates. Thus, although 4-horse chariots were sometimes used for war and racing, cars for ordinary transportation were usually drawn by 1 or 2 beasts. The Persians and the ancient Britons fastened scythe blades to the hubs of their war chariots to mow down foot soldiers. The people of the south and east of the Mediterranean preferred a chariot high in the front and open in the back, while those to the north and west made chariots high in the back and low in the front, the seat across the back. In later centuries, the open rear chariot, in which the driver stood up, was preferred for fighting, hunting, and racing, whereas the open front chariot was preferred for pleasure riding and simple transport. As a chariot needed smooth ground to run on, its military use was limited. Once men had the fine median riding horse, chariots became less effective than the same number of men mounted on horses. After the time of Alexander the Great, chariots went out of use for fighting, albeit they were kept for private carriages, governmental mail carts, and racing vehicles. In addition to developing engines of war and cavalry, the Assyrian kings found time for peaceful public works. When Sargon II invaded Armenia in 714 BC, he saw an irrigation system not yet known in Mesopotamia. This system, also used in Iran, can be called either by the Arabic name Qanat or the Persian Kariz.